They became known as the Getty Foundation, and they formed the foundation as a group in Los Angeles, and they were very attracted by the fact that Dwaine had written this article about curriculum, and they liked the article, and they asked Dwaine to come into a meeting in Los Angeles, and he went there and he had a meeting with them. And Lonnie Latta Duke liked Dwaine's presentation very, very much, and he, through a whole series of suggestions, conferences, all kinds of things, they finally decided to get a group of people together in Los Angeles and move ahead with a art curriculum project. And there were, let me think now, if I remember correctly, 26 people were invited to a meeting in LA. And my story gets all hazy here. I'm editing all the time I'm talking. I was one of the people invited because Dwaine and Mickey and I had worked together on this project previously. And so we went to the meeting, and it was a very strange meeting, and we saw immediately Lonnie Latta Duke controlled everything, absolutely everything. Nobody said anything unless she gave him permission. I mean, she was a charming woman, but she was the boss of the whole operation without any doubt whatsoever. And we sat around and we had this meeting in LA, and it was an odd meeting. Nobody was comfortable. Nobody was sure exactly what was to be the outcome of what it was we were sitting around doing. And I won't go into the whole history, but we all went back to our original locations. I came back to here, which is where I was working. And nobody heard a word from anybody about what had happened, and nobody heard a word from anybody about what was going to happen. And everybody was wondering what was going to happen. It was really very mysterious. But Lonnie Duke had taken over this foundation and had absolute control of any kind of publicity or any kind of announcement or anything. And for 1 year, nobody who attended the original meeting ever heard anything. And nobody knew what was going to ever happen or whatever. And I got a phone call one day asking me if I would come back to a second meeting. And it was very fascinating because I won't go into the whole history, but one thing that's very important. I came back to the meeting, went into the meeting, and realized almost nobody was there from the original meeting. This was almost a whole new group. Not quite, but 7/8 of the group was no longer invited.
Was Dwaine there?
Dwaine was there originally, and Dwaine was in both meetings, of course, because she was supporting his curriculum idea development. So at this second meeting, we talked much more realistically about what could come out of this. We talked about the Getty money and how it could be spent. And we were all, of course, totally amazed by sitting on $13 million. And it turned out, of course, that the $13 million wasn't just art education, it was art also. And a lot of that money went into museum education, museum program development, and so on. But we ended up with a huge amount of money. Literally more money than the government had ever spent previously for art in the United States from the beginning of the government. We had more money in our pockets to do a curriculum development project than the government had spent up to that point in time in terms of art program development. So we wondered what in the world is going to come of this and how is it going to happen, but we were told very clearly, Mickey and Dwaine and I were told that we would be writing a document which would lay out the foundation for the Getty money and the Getty support of art education. And that in itself was a very fascinating time. No, I didn't write that. We're up to 1974 and 1976
Yeah.
here, and we're a little bit past that now.
Yeah.
We're in about
Probably early 80s.
yeah, well, no, not quite yet, but almost. I think it was about 79 when we were actually, no, 78, I think. 78, when Mickey and Dwaine and I were named as the writers of the Getty document. And believe it or not, we wrote what became a very small document.
Yeah, yeah. Is it that one?
Yeah.
This is the one I think that is on the reading list. It was in visual arts research. Yeah.
This was our paper right here in a book by Ralph, in a journal of the Journal of Aesthetic Education, who the editor was Ralph Smith, University of Illinois, and this paper was the Getty document. Now I'm taking the time to point all this out. Between when we were commissioned to write it and it got published was 3.5 years. And during that 3.5 years, we were, I have to be careful how I say this.
No, go ahead.
We attended many meetings. And in every meeting we attended, there was a group this big or larger. And the purpose of these people, they were all told, was you are to criticize these people in every way you can. You are to challenge every idea they express. You are to say this is no good and we don't want it. And we went through 3.5 years of this same dialogue with critics. Every meeting we went to was with a different group of people, not the same people. We went to different groups of people around the country. At one time we would meet primarily with artists. Another time we would meet with art historians. Another time we would meet with art critics. Other times we would meet with public school teachers. Other times we would meet with university level people similar to ourselves. And in every single meeting we went, we were challenged and challenged and challenged and challenged. It was the toughest time. I've often said I wish to hell I'd never gotten into it. It wasn't that bad, but it was almost that bad.
Were you being paid at that point?
Not being paid, but being pampered to death. I mean, everywhere we went, we ate at the most fancy, expensive restaurants you could imagine. Everything that we could possibly want, we got in terms of background materials, and the money being spent was just unbelievable in terms of support to what we were trying to get done. But it was really fascinating. When we finally got the last meeting we went to was with Elliot Eisner and a woman that had been a student when we were there together. And that was the last meeting. That was a fairly different meeting than all the rest, because nobody was challenging by that time. What we were doing was getting final approval for this document. But this document then is a layout of what Getty believed should be said in terms of supporting art education in the United States. And
it was something like going through doctoral defense
over and over again. Yes.
Okay.
and in some cases, well, I'm being very hesitant. I remember sitting in a meeting and a man picked up a book like this and threw it as hard as he could throw at the person sitting opposite him. Luckily, he didn't hit him, but if he had, he'd have done a lot of damage. I mean, these meetings were ugly.